And thank you so much for tuning into Morning Live, and of course coming to you live now from the Results Operations Centre in Pretoria, The Rock. And as you can see there on the board, those numbers, they keep ticking over. Can tell you right now that with regard to the National Assembly votes, counting just over 15, in fact just past 15.58% now, so itching up there. And this of course is what we are waiting for. As soon as those numbers get any higher, I think the predictions will become a lot clearer. And then also the turnout, we are told, is at 64.51%, spoiled votes 1.27%. And then if we can just take a look at who's in the lead as far as the parties are concerned at this stage, and this of course is for seats to the National Assembly. We can see the ANC there. The ANC is at 53, I have to stand up here, 53.15%, the DA 27.86%, and the EFF 7.62%, Freedom Front Plus 3.79%, and the IFP at 1.47%. And this is how it is stacking up at the moment. I welcome now Professor Somadoda Fikeni, political analyst. Your take on what we're seeing thus far?
Well, the predictions seem to be coming through, and at this early stage, the DA has to be worried because normally it has stronger constituencies in places that quickly count. And later on, when the townships and the rural areas are coming, you'll begin to see ANC improving somewhat, EFF coming stronger, and your IFP climbing. So at this early stage, we could simply say that the pictures will change according to the density of population as well as the slowness of the process of counting.
And if we just take a look at what's happening in the provincial legislatures and just run through those provinces very briefly, starting with the Eastern Cape that we just saw there, and what's happening there, the picture: ANC 69.46, DA 17.63, 6.34 for the EFF, the UDM at 1.83%, ATM at 1.22%. Now, interesting here is these are strongholds for the UDM and the ATM, but they're polling at less than 2%. Must be said though, this is with just over a quarter of the voting district counted. But what does that tell us?
Even if it was a quarter, that you have a stronghold. The stronghold is what lifts you nationally and your aggregation nationally. If in your stronghold you're not polling very well, it means the results elsewhere are likely to pull you down. And that is the worry for the UDM, and that is the worry for ATM, because it was relying on the churches supporting it in a massive way. And we kept on warning them that if you have a single sector that you are focusing on, whether it's workers or it's women or it's Christians, it has never worked before and it's unlikely to work right now. And you can see that you didn't see the Christians or the church people coming en masse to ATM.
And that's an interesting point that you make about the single sector appeal, because if we're looking at the predictions at this stage, it seems as though all of those single sector issue parties are not faring very well.
Certainly, if you look at, the workers, the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party, it's not doing very well, and it launched very late. And again, the fact that NUMSA led the process rather than the entire federation was already indicative that there is no consensus on that. ATM, the same thing. Women Forward, the same thing. And that in itself ought to be a lesson that in order to gain traction, you ought to diversify your constituencies.
And I just want to run through some of the other provinces very quickly here, going to the Free State and just taking a look at what it looks like there. So the Free State at the moment, and as it loads there, you can see 69.46 for the ANC, the DA 17.63, EFF, and it just changed as I was reading it. So 59.44 for the ANC, 19.76 the DA, EFF coming in at 10.83, 4.93 for the Freedom Front Plus, and ADAC 0.87. And then from there we go quickly to Gauteng and just take a look at the picture here and what is happening. And in Gauteng, we see 53.80 for the ANC. The DA is at 24.54, 13.59 for the EFF, Freedom Front Plus 4.03, and ACDP 0.66. And these, of course, are just the top polling parties at this point. And KwaZulu-Natal and the race for votes there in the provincial legislature, and this is how that is panning out. And I must also indicate, just keep an eye on the counting progress. So still very low in KwaZulu-Natal, as we can see. I think it's trying to reload there. So, but at the moment, the figures that we are looking at, 8.95%. So that's still very early days in the counting process, and there were some serious problems there. And with that number of voting districts declared, you have 53.8 for the ANC, 24.54 for the DA, 13.59 for the EFF, Freedom Front Plus. They seem to be hovering around 4% there across the board, and ACDP 0.66.
In fact, I would say in these elections, what is indicated in this early counting process is that the Freedom Front Plus is one of the biggest winners in terms of its performance. And one can attribute that to the fact that the land issue, the language issues might have rallied the Afrikaner constituency. Even those who have been within the DA from the New National Party might have come home precisely because as DA is trying to diversify, win more black voters, that might be causing discomfort to some of those Afrikaners who were within the DA. They might now be coming back to the Freedom Front Plus. So you're seeing their strong results there.
And seem to be booting there once again for some of the provinces. Limpopo legislature there, and this is again very low, 6.72. So difficult to call it at this time for the provincial legislatures, because counting still seems to be in its elementary stages. But the ANC 70.61, and then you have the EFF at 12.07, 9.80 for the DA, 4.58 for the Freedom Front Plus, ACDP 0.41. And I just want to see if we can perhaps look at some comparisons here with regard to what is going on. Still going to take a while to come up, but the point here is it seems as though the predictions will hold. And as we said, there will be, of course, slight variation in those numbers because there is about a 2% error margin or less. But what do you make of that? What does this mean for the president, for example, the ANC, and how they are likely to poll, the DA, and of course the EFF for starters?
Well, I do think that the ANC must have been holding its breath precisely because it was going through one of the most difficult period. Divisions within the leadership were showing that you were beginning to have even the commissions of inquiry, like the one of the state capture one, exposing how some of its prominent leaders were involved in such a manner. One would have expected that they would be more vulnerable at this stage. That they are still holding in an upper 50s, closer to 60%, does indicate that ANC still has a lot of traction, or whatever losses that we're seeing in the local government elections, they might have regained or stabilized at that point. But it is still not going to be very easy for President Ramaphosa, precisely because ANC leadership, the NEC, still has people who are implicated. Either the judiciary will do the work of attrition for him, or he will have to do something magical, something dramatic, in order to assert himself within the party without repercussions.
Let's pause it there because I don't want to rush it. I want to talk through those elements that you mentioned and also look at the other parties, the implications of these early predictions that we are seeing. But for now, let's park it there and let's give it back to the studio. Studio 11 in Auckland Park. Good morning, Leanne.